Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods for round 3 of the 2023 season. In this late episode, we try to come to grips with the big loss against the Cats in the grand final rematch. So thank you very much for joining us in this very tough chat. You are a true fan. So fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods.
Swans!
Okay, Swans fans, I welcome back to the potty the bad man from Manly, Bretty. Are you ready for your first potty of the season?
Probably could have picked a better one, but yeah, let's give it a go.
We were just talking off air that the last time you came on was the loss against it was Gold Coast last
Gold
year,
Coast,
round
yeah.
8, I think, which was also a disappointing loss. So there's something to be said about Bretty being the podcast. So we'll talk about that internally between the bevy. In the meantime, let's go straight to the score recap. Last Saturday night, our Sydney Swans were defeated by the Geelong Cats by 93 points with a final score of 5-7-37 to 20-10, 130. Brady, mate, do you want to kick off with your first impressions?
Not really, but I think I will. Yeah, I mean, I do know the sentiment that I've got a couple of chats, and one of them, a lot of people turning the game off at about some point through the second half. So that was probably enough said there. Yeah, I had the same sort of impression. We just got absolutely destroyed all over the park, but in particular in the middle. We were kind of expecting to get smashed by their forwards, which is, yeah, that did happen. But what was really disappointing was how easily we got beaten in the middle as well.
Yeah, it was lost out of the middle. By the time we hit their forwards, we, like you said, we knew the backs are going to be struggling. Like that was well known. We had no Rampy, no Tommy McCartan, no Paddy McCartan, up against the two All Australian forwards, including the All Australian captain in Tomahawk from last year, and Jeremy Cameron, with talks about him winning a Brownlow this year. Basically, we knew it was going to be tough in that back line, but our mids didn't really put up too much of a fight for them rather, to get the ball up forward. It was a tough game. Horse in the presser said the following, and I'm taking snippets out of his comments, his first comments there. When he was asked about how did the game go, what did you see, and he said, it's hard to put into words. Normally we put in more than that. It was disappointing. It wasn't up to standard. So Horse was also genuinely perplexed about what just happened to the whole team, mate. Did you see anything, Brady, like on the field that warrants much more discussion about any positioning or anything from the back of that?
No, I think we all, as we were watching it, it did just seem like we just didn't have effort. And the comments that Horse made after, yeah, he just seemed really disappointed. It's like the guys didn't put in. And, as a coach, it's not good to have your players put in and then get beaten, but at least if they're putting in and getting beaten by players who are genuinely better than them, it's, you can hold your head up a little bit. But, yeah, the fact that he thinks they just didn't put in enough effort was, it's probably about all I need to say about it anyway.
We walked into this game as the grand final rematch with, I wouldn't say our heads held up high at the state of the team because a lot of injuries, but we definitely felt that we at least could hope that the boys would compete. That was as far as I'm concerned, that was the main KPI for this week, was go out there, compete, do your job. If we lose by 20, then so be it. No, maybe more given the backs are going to get hammered, but nonetheless, go out there and do what you got to do. Unfortunately, as we get down to the ABOB medal points, you will kind of we'll be battling to work out the top three on the day because we didn't see. I think maybe it's on. I don't know, Brett. What do you feel about this? Is it not so much helpful, but is it not really telling the story if I were to say something like the boys didn't put in effort? Because I think the effort was there, but it just wasn't reciprocated in any form by their matching number. It wasn't up to the standard that we needed for that game. I don't know. What do you
Are
think?
you,
Do you think the effort was there or not?
are
I'm in the
you,
middle.
are you suggesting we were psyched out of the game?
I think so. I think between the eyes, the game was. I mean, they unfurled the freaking grand final, premiership
Mm,
flag at the venue before it. Like,
yeah, that was. I know individuals like Jules, our beloved Jules, were
mm,
not too impressed with the unfurling happening. But at the same time, we'd happily do it to them
yeah, that's
if
right.
the roles were reversed. Look, if I was trying to read between the lines there, if you're suggesting that we were probably psyched out of the game as a result of the grand final, then yeah, arguably, some people. If you ask Noddy,
Hmm.
he'd certainly say that they seem to have the mental wood on us anyway.
Mm. It's hard to make an argument that psychology wasn't part of this loss, right? You'd have to because we were beaten in places that we arguably don't do that terribly, and they were just way better. But at the same time, their team as a whole just played better. Like they were just a better team individually. David King on I don't know SCN or something, one of those Victorian shows there was suggesting that with the Swans that we didn't have, mind you, this is AFL media, right? Most of it, I'm just going to put a caveat out there for everyone before I read this out on David King's own statement. AFL media, as far as it goes for the Swans, is typically geared towards the last game, right? And I guess most sporting is like that. But in particular for the Swans, more so, those out of market teams. So what they see is what that game that they saw and they'll forget about all the rest of the games, right? Let's use, for example, the comment earlier this year when they suggested that no one in the Swans had any extra to give, like they'd already hit their limits. Like things like that are said about the Swans team because the last two games is all they remember. They don't watch too many games. So David King did say that Sydney didn't have any players that could drive them out of a situation, pulling the ball out of the contest. And he rattled off a bunch of names, Canelio, Bontempelli, Parrish, guys like that, to that players that could basically grab the ball from the contest and then drive it forward and get something moving. He suggested that Sydney had none of those. Brady, do you agree with David, or do you see this as just being the last week was just a terrible week? Like we need to move on from it.
If he's talking specifically about the game, I can understand that. But
Yeah,
generally, we definitely have players that can do that. Luke Parker has been doing it for years.
yeah,
He will literally go in and rip the ball out of a contest and get it off to someone. And Callum Mills himself um, is not shy of getting stuck in and getting it out as well. So I, I personally don't agree with that more broadly. But if you were just to base that comment off the game on Saturday night, then I'm not going to argue with him. And let's
yeah.
be honest, he's got far more AFL knowledge than me.
I don't know, mate. I heard you were a pretty good AFL player in the Rezzies, so I'll leave that there before the big injury. But uh, so Rowy's got it in him. Warner's got it in him. We've seen Warner do it. Um, Seeing more and more of Rowie, although not getting the touches, reefing balls out of big people's arms and getting it out, clearances and stuff, like playing the tough football. And like you mentioned, Parker's won games on his back a fair few times, even in the last like 12 months. So I don't take what David King says with a lot, but at the same time, I can appreciate why he said it because it did seem that our mids were just off the pace and blunt, basically blunt, and not sharp at all.
Yeah, and in the middle, you have to be fair to Geelong. It was the same as the grand final. We played below average, and they played really, really well.
Mm.
It seemed Max Holmes and Paddy Dangerfield, for crying out loud. Oh, I haven't watched many Geelong. Actually, this might have only been the first, maybe the second Geelong game I'd watched all year, and it's the best I'd seen him play for a while. And it just happened to be against us. But young, I don't know how old he is, Max Holmes. They seem to have a field day with
Mm.
us in the middle. So yeah,
Yeah.
can't really take anything away from Geelong. They did play very well, but at the same time, we should not be losing by 93 points.
No, no. I mean, Holmes is only 20 years old as well. So, like, he's one of the few young players that are starring for Geelong. But it doesn't matter whether they're young or old, I guess. What matters is the game that just happened. And that's kind of where that stands. Um, all right, look, let's kind of roll into some of the good, the bad, and the stats. One of the things I was going to point out, mate, in terms of the good stuff, because we can talk about some of the bad stuff for a fair while, but one of the good things that I saw, and then maybe this leads into a greater discussion, which was the hitouts we won by +9. And you were noting before we started that we were equal in clearances, just about, I think, by like one or so. And these both point to Laddams, who has been, let's be honest, a bit of a whipping boy in the last couple of weeks, maybe this season generally, because he's had his brain fades last year and he's trying to come good this year, being a good lad. I am happy with the way that Laddams is playing, and I personally don't understand why there's so much hate going towards him. What is your take on all this?
Oh, low hanging fruit for some people. Just
Mm,
pick someone who's already been picked on. Look, he has given away, as we were talking about earlier, he does tend to give away a free inside 50 every game, and people will just remember that.
mm,
Uh, but I'm with you. I thought in Saturday night's game, he I wouldn't say he was fantastic, but he won the hitouts anyway. Sure, might not have been to advantage, but we still won the centre clearances. We got beat in the stoppages. So I still think he's doing quite well. As you said, maybe he's just a whipping boy. Someone needs to blame someone, so pick the big tattooed guy.
yeah, I mean, we all miss Hickey, and which we have to remember. Okay, this week's game is going to be Laddam's 50th game. He's a baby. He's 25 years old. He's going to play 50 games this week. Understand, of those 50 games as well, not all, less than half of them has been playing ruck as well, right? So he's had very little AFL time as a ruckman. He's expected to be the main ruckman, the only ruckman for the Sydney Swans coming off a grand final loss. You know what I mean? Like, there's quite a lot expected of him. And I personally, when I'm watching him play, I'm seeing him do perfectly good things. Like, yes, he brain fades. Yeah, he decided to, like, netball pass a ball last week, like the week before last. Yeah, sure, he does the odd thing that just makes you go, what are you doing, mate? Like, really? And yes, Noddy suggested last week at one point he was so angry that he thought about trading him immediately. Like, he kind of does that to the fans, but
Not like Noddy to get emotional.
exactly. But if you take it on like as a general work of the year, I think he's gotten better and better every game. And yeah, it's not amazing. He's not tearing it up, but he's doing his job. And I don't understand how fans, can be jumping on his back, given that of this game in particular, he was one of the few people that was doing his job, doing his role anyway. So yeah, I wanted to kick off with that because I think that's just a bit unnecessary to be smashing someone that is clearly working very, very hard in a very hard position at the age that he is, with the inexperience that he is, and is still doing a decent job. So if you're out there in the Laddams anti fan club, I don't know how else to say it, and you've heard my words now, just take it on. Have a look at the stats, have a look at the games again, and just consider it that maybe he's not necessarily the fault of these losses. Yeah, he'll frustrate you, but a young ruckman will do that. All right, we've got some time. All right, I compared him to Tim English in the stats earlier today. Tim English has got 100 and something games on him, just over 100, just about 100, like double the amount of games that Laddams has, right? And the stats between them are obviously Tim English is a very good player. He gets around really well. He knows exactly where to be. He's very dangerous. I am certain that Laddams will be a decent ruckman in the future. He'll get better at positioning. He'll get better in the contest. He'll get better at the hit outs to advantage. He's got all the tools. He's a good size, and yeah, he'll work it all out. I don't know, mate. Do you want to wrap up this love for Laddams segment anymore to finish it
I
off?
think I agree. He'll mature. We'll see more of the good lad, less of the bad lad. But yeah, like I said, I can understand people are frustrated and just want to pick on someone, but
Mm.
he wouldn't be the guy I'd pick on.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Mate, have you got any stats, good, bad, or thoughts to add to the segment?
Uh, do you want some bad?
Go for it.
You gave me a stat 72 clangers.
Mm. 72. 7-2. Yep.
72.
72. Yep.
Is that like, what's an average? I don't even know what an average is.
30-ish, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was within. It was their second goal at Blitzar's, the snap. It was Callum Mills did some good work to get the ball off the ground to Juzzy, and then Blakey tried a little kind of not
Mm.
really a dinky kick, but just straight to Graham Myers, and he mongreled it. Blitzar's picks it up and goal. But for me, that was setting the tone for the night, kind of grand final 2022 all over again. But yeah, I did
Yeah.
not realise it was that. I knew there were a lot of clangers. Maybe it's because I had a lot of beers on Saturday night, but I didn't realise it was 72.
It was, yeah, it's a lot. That's a lot of ordinary kicks, kicks right down the throat, kicks missing your opponent, your man, handballs in the wrong spot. Just, yeah, like I think there was one section where we got out of the back pockets decently. I think you were reminding me about this, and we got out of the back pocket decently. There was a chain of handballs that kind of went in circles. Typically in that sense, you find a loose man after two or three handballs, and they get themselves a bit of a clearance out of the danger. But this time around, like they were just shattered. They weren't moving their feet. No one was moving their feet, and so the defenders is just like basically just walk up to one of our guys, and the guys like get tackled, and they're passing the ball off. Did that three times, and ended up I think with Juzzy getting out of bounds. What's that called? What's that term? The purposeful out of bounds on purpose or
Deliberate.
whatever. Deliberate. Fucking hell, Jesus Christ.
That's what we yell out anyway.
Yeah, well, this is what the game has done to me. It's fried me. Yeah, and that was just an example of just like the really ordinary play, man. Like yeah, the clangers are part of it, but just generally around the ball, it was ordinary, absolutely ordinary, mate. Anything else on the list there?
Um, one thing I did notice when I was watching it at 1.3 quarter time, was it? They were like 18-5.
Mm.
They kicked remarkably straight from their
Yeah, they
set
did.
shots, which was, it reminded me of the loss to the D's. Yeah, when you're letting them take a grab on the lead and then going back and slotting it every time, it's always going to be hard to beat,
Mm.
especially when you're not doing the same at the other end. So their accuracy was, for me, it felt high. But I don't know how many set shots they had, but at one point I think it was 18-5. So it's going to be hard to beat.
Yeah. No, I remember that. I remember wherever they kicked it from, pocket,
Oh,
corner,
Jeremy Cameron, 50
Jerry
metres
Cameron.
out,
Yeah. Yeah.
basically, 45 snap,
Yeah.
as cool as you like. Rather
And
frustrating to watch.
I think both him and Hawkins kick 5-0. I think 5 straight. Like what are you going to do? Like what you can't defend a good kick, right? That's one thing. You can defend them from kicking in front. You'll do that, and they for a period there they did. They still managed to freaking kick them. It'd be a
Mm.
different story if now, arguably they 5 of those were behinds. That's 30 points, but that still takes us down to a 63-point loss. Like there was so much going wrong that day. But like to your point, mate, like it was 55% of the time they went inside 50, they scored. Right, 55%, and then just about 40% they goaled from it. So like your what you saw is correct. Like 40% of the time they went inside 50, they got a
It's a
goal
goal.
from it. A
Mm.
goal, yeah.
Yeah, tough day out. Yeah, nothing else really to add from a stat perspective.
Hmm. One thing that I know add here, I know we're I'm sorry, fans, but I know we're banging on to the negativity a bit, but we're trying to just unravel what we saw, right? Their efficiency was 12 disposals per goal. So that's how many touches they needed to score per goal. Put that in comparison to the Pies Bombers game. That was very free flowing if you went and watched it. And it was a decent score line. And it was 15 disposals per touch to score. So this was three less and as consistent as you like it. 55% of the time they basically 55% of the time they got 12 disposals, they went and scored something. Like, that's crazy. Like, just mental stuff. So it was a really, really tough one. Like, it's not a whole lot of good stats to come up with. So the bad ones just kind of shine and they basically prove what we saw, I guess. And unfortunately, I don't not Freddie, I don't know what you see of this. I struggle to see stats around that make me feel positive that we did something right in the day. Like,
I did like one thing.
yeah,
Saw after the game, Errol Goulden, 16 disposals, 16 kicks. I
there you
did
go.
like that stat. I don't think he got a handball away. So
Well, yeah, and even then, arguably, like if I'm going to be devil's advocate here, he's playing inside mid. He, sh- like he should be handballing it mostly, you know. So yeah, that kind of makes me worried a bit again.
yeah, depending on where he's getting it,
Yeah,
and whether or not he started in there, I couldn't really call at the time how often he was actually starting, whether he was just standing outside the stoppages.
yeah, true, true.
So,
Yeah, well, do we have any favorite moments we want to bring up?
well, one that you noted was probably mine as well as our first goal was
Hmm.
Aaron Francis' first touch. As for the very short period where I thought Hayward was going to have a great game leading up to his first goal. Yeah, it was just it was a smart touch, ball coming at him. Chose not to grab it, but just played it on nicely to Hayward and slotted it beautifully.
Hmm.
So I thought that was probably my favourite moment of the game, and unfortunately, it was in the first 2 minutes.
And then the game unraveled.
We all know what happened after that.
Yeah, I love that moment. That was he kind of like the slap pass. He kind of gave it a good thump. I liked it for two reasons. One, it's a pretty cocky thing to do, right? Like, given the circumstances, first game for his new team, you know, playing forward of all places, um, and also good vision for him to know where Hayward was as the ball's coming towards him again in the first game, playing for a new team on the big stage, away, playing a position you're not normally playing, and for him to have the vision to know exactly where Hayward was and snap it over made me kind of really excited about what else he can do with maybe some of that brain power. So yeah,
Yeah, really enjoyed that. But I don't think it was. I didn't see it as cocky. I just thought maybe he just knew what he was doing,
yeah,
knew where his
just
guy was. But
just kicked it, just had a crack at it. I had one moment where Laddams crushed a guy. Like, as you can tell, fans, we're really, you know, digging deep for something. So at one point, Laddams crushed a bloke, and I liked it. I can't remember who it was. It was around the thing at the beginning of the second quarter, but that was cool. And then the rest of the game happened.
let's be honest, it's a contact sport. We all love it when someone gets folded
Yeah,
and then gets back up, maybe a little gingerly from the other team, but still
yeah,
gets back up. We all love that.
yeah. And then, I mean, if we're going to go back to Laddams again, for Laddams' love, simple things: get your hands on the ball, get in position, take the contested mark, and then crush a mid every now and then. Like, so he's done two of the three. All right, we're getting there. So anyway, that's something. One of the missed opportunities, mate. Millsy couldn't play out of the center, and the times that he did play out of the center, from what I noticed, we started getting clearances. We started getting more effect on the ball pretty quickly. I felt, but then he had to roll back and be one of the few the few players that could get remotely close to these freaking behemoths in the front line. So there's not really a whole lot to be said there other than just necessity drove him into the mids and he had an effect, and then necessity drove him to the back line and he had a little bit of an effect there. But
Yeah,
Millsy played a decent game.
Horse was questioned about that, I think, after the
Mm,
game, and as he said, he's like, "What am I supposed to do? I had nobody back. I needed to put him back, but um, the moment you send him forward, yeah, it exposes the back line a bit. So yeah, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
yeah. Not too many magnets to swing around last week. So
No,
what are you going to do? Same with this. Well, this week's a little bit easier. We'll get to that. Well, let's get straight into the Bob medal, which is our equivalent of the Bob Skilton medal. We give 3, 2, 1 points to the best Swans player in each game, and with the highest points receiving the ability for this week not to be reminded of this game ever again. There is no monetary prize this week. There is no case of beer. There is no trips to Finland like we've given away other days. It's purely you're not having to be reviewing this game ever again in your life. So that's the prize for this week. The points go out to 3 points to Rowbottom, 2 points to Parker, and then 1 point is unknown because we genuinely struggled to work out who to give 1 point to, and we'll get into that in a second. But Brady, do you want to take it away with Rowy's game?
yeah, Rowie, we did. You noticed him in the centre clearances. He got the ball out, put it inside 50. Not always a beautiful kick inside 50, but yeah, I thought he did really well in the clearances. He was, as usual, he was the tackling machine. He was in there tackling. He's got a fantastic tackling technique. Knows how to pin the useful arm. So look, we're probably going to say it a couple of times. Out of the bad bunch, you could argue he was one of the better. But even then, could have possibly said that Parker was. Anyway, there's a few guys we're almost just we're splitting hairs here. But I thought he played okay, Rowie,
Mm,
and the effort was there, definitely.
yeah.
Probably not much more to add.
No, I mean, 5 clearances, 13 disposals, and second in the Swans with meters gained. Second in the Swans for meters gained looks good on paper, but it also was only 300 meters.
Mm.
So, I mean, that just goes to show the state of the team. But yeah, I agree, Brady. I think he was one of the few that were looked like they were really giving it their all. Um, and yeah, just his tackles just made a bit of a difference when he was tackling. He did go to tag Dangerfield at one point. That is the biggest mismatch of a tag I've ever seen in my life. One can run like the wind, and one doesn't. And Dangerfield's, he's a beast. Like he's been one of the better players of the league for a decade or so. So yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? But it's at least they given him responsibilities as well, like that. I like that. If you're going to do something with the game and with the team and with some of these younger players, put them on top of the better player on the game that's on fire. Get them to try to make an impact. Like do something. Like if this is going to be a loss, then make it a learning experience loss anyway. So I was okay with that. Mate, Parker, what do you want to say about our friend Parker?
Oh, he's our hard nut.
Mm,
He's the man. I always feel like I underappreciate his efforts. But yeah, again, in a team of we'll just say non-performers for the week. Yeah, he had 12 contested possessions. Was it? Yeah, 21 touches.
mm,
Just his usual hard self goes in tackles, but yeah, just didn't go forward and kick a couple of goals or anything like that, which you usually see in his bigger games.
mm.
But yeah, worthy of a mention in this particular team. Whether or not it's 2 or 1, we'll argue that in a sec anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, same, mate. I think he was good. Well, no, okay. Let me rephrase that. He's one of our better players on the day. And yeah, it's been very hard to pick 3-2-1 for this week. Well, we might as well get straight into it. So 1 point is to the unknown. So Brady and I are right now going to battle it out, and you at home can tell us how wrong we get it. Mate, who would you put up, or more than one player even? Which players would you imagine warranting discussion for a 1 point?
For a point, I would. There's probably two in the mix. One is Errol Goulden, and the other is Isaac Heaney.
Mm-hmm.
So the Heat and Errol. The reason I would put the Heat in there is, look, he kicked a goal. Can't remember how many touches. Laid on about 7 tackles,
14
7 marks.
touches.
Yeah, so look, I thought he was okay, Heaney. So he had a really good game against Richmond. Richmond, yeah, it was the Tigers.
Yep.
Can't remember how many weeks ago that was. So I probably would have put Heaney in there, but at the same time, Errol worked hard. I don't know what the stats were on Errol. Can't remember what they were, but I know he had
16,
it.
16 touches, 5
Oh, sorry, I did
marks.
say that. 16,
Yeah.
16 touches, 16 kicks.
Yeah.
However, yeah, he had our most meters gained. I felt like he was working really hard. So it would have been one of those two. Would have been my
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah, no worries. I started off with Foxy. I felt Foxy. I was hell bent on saying like, look, I think he played pretty well. I think he's like 94% disposal efficiency, 17 disposals, 11 intercepts, 10 contested possessions. Playing out of that back line, he was under the pump, and I felt that he was pretty clean. And then I was watching the game again, and I realized that he was absolutely played like a fiddle a fair few times against very big opponents that were moving around very well. An excellent forward line. So I'm torn between saying that he deserves totally the 1 point and saying that he played a very good game given the circumstances he had. So that's where I lie with him. I would agree with you though with Heaney that given where he's been, this week was particularly a decent week for him. I felt. I think he did a lot of the good things. Uh, he was around. He injected himself into the play a bit more, which is something that we weren't seeing other weeks. So I was happy with his game. Whether he played a good game or not, I don't think. I mean, few did, if any. So yeah, I'll leave that there. And I kind of agree with you with Gordon. To be honest with you, I think that's a pretty good
So what do you?
number
Are
there.
we? Are we going to paper scissors rocket
Yeah, I
between?
mean, there's no video at the moment, so it's going to be a pretty freaking interesting scissors paper rocket. What do you reckon? I am
Well, I'd probably
personally
say
kind of
Heaney. Let's just look. If you look at pure stats,
mm,
Heaney was up there around the 100 mark. So you'd have to offer him a point, wouldn't you?
yeah, and I mean, one of the other reasons I'd be kind of inclined to give it to him was also the 8 tackles. I mean,
Mm.
that's kind of where we're failing a bit in just putting pressure on them. And with Gordon only getting the 3, and yeah, I mean, putting on the meters gain and plenty of kicks and everything, but I just feel that Heaney was probably more effective to try to turn the game around. So if you're
Saved
happy,
us from 100 points, got us
yeah,
to 93.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it helped us a lot in those last 7. That might make a difference at the end of the season. It has before. Um, so we're happy with Heaney for 1 point.
Happy or are we satisfied?
Content.
Yep.
The
Yep.
Heat.
Let's go with the Heat.
Isaac the Heat Heaney gets himself 1 point. All right, mate. We that does that. Was any other players that deserved any bit of love for this week, or any notice?
You did throw out a stat about someone who, look, arguably you may not have noticed him at all, was Hayden McLean
Hmm,
with 8 1 percenters.
hmm.
Now, I honestly didn't know whether that was a good or a bad thing. 8 1 percenters, I feel like that was probably a decent thing, but obviously we still got absolutely pumped. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
interesting stat nonetheless.
I love 1 percenters as indicative of someone just doing little things that you're not noticing. Tommy McCartan dominates that stat typically. 11 in a game and stuff like. Typically, that's kind of like a good number for him. So when I saw 8 for McLean, I was like, look, didn't notice him too much, but the fact that he's doing the little things, shepherding, trying to smother, putting bodies between it, punching the ball out, just doing things just do whatever he can, even if he's not got the ball. So I saw that stat and I was like, that's good. I mean, I've got a bit of a soft spot for McLean. You might have heard that over this last couple of years, but I think that was a good thing for him. Not warranting of any points, of course, but just an interesting stat. Mate, all right. If we're wrapping up this game, we go straight into the post game MRO injuries, and then we start talking replacements for this coming week, which is in 2 days' time. Injuries. Foxy got a concussion off being bowled over by Atkin, got hit in the head clearly to the point where he's got a concussion and nothing said by MRO. No one batted an eyelid. Mate, you played enough footy. Did you see that as being warranting a discussion, a fine, a consideration, or do you think that's just a football act and things happened?
I said at the time, I just thought there was nothing else Duncan could have done. Like Foxy
Was it
was moving
Duncan?
at speed.
Okay,
Yeah, it's Mitch Duncan,
right.
and I'm pretty sure it was Mitch Duncan, unless I was totally mistaken. Look, I thought in real time, I just thought he braced, and I thought they just collected shoulders. It was a pretty heavy hit, but I didn't think there was anything else Duncan could really do. I know that I think it might have been you sent out to the chat a photo of the point of impact, and
Yeah,
it
Noddy sent
did.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, it didn't look as innocent as I had thought. But at the same time, I mean, Foxy was moving with speed and was well past the ball, so I didn't think it was worthy of too much scrutiny. And obviously, the MRO didn't either.
yeah. I mean, the photo the photo that we sent around, I think it was sent around on Insta or Twitter or one of the ones, was that it was Mitch Duncan, and it was Mitch Duncan, with eyes purely on the man. Like there was no eyes on the ground. There's no eyes for the ball. It was just eyes right into the freaking head of Foxy. And this was taken a split second, 0.1 of a second before the hit impacted. And so it's a pretty unfair photo, to be fair. You don't know where eyes are darting, and chances are his eyes were on the ball up until that very last second. I mean, his feet are off the ground and everything. Anyway, I don't know how I feel about it, but the fact that we're stemming our tackles because we're trying to protect the head. Okay, fine, and then that's the biggest talking point. And so everyone who remotely puts on a bit of a swing tackle, injury or not, they're like penalty. Sit out a week, get a fine. I don't get how when he clearly hit him in the head in a dangerous action, even if it was a football action, not protecting the head, guys concussed, why that didn't even warrant just a fine or a discussion. That really kind of made me concerned. And more so, there's just reiterating that AFL does have flavors of the week. And this was an example of it. This was, as far as I was concerned, this would be a discussion point, but because we're only talking about tackles, because some big name Melburnians are having to sit out some time, then it's a discussion point, and that's the only thing we talk about. So anyway, that's what I say on that.
I will add to that, though. Horse
Yeah,
shares your sentiment. We saw Buddy copped a week for quite a similar.
yeah,
You could argue he probably was a tiny bit of intent in Buddy's action,
yeah,
but
yeah. But
Horse,
that's more
Horse was,
knowing Buddy than the action. I feel.
yeah, true.
Yeah.
But yeah, Horse was sharing the same thoughts. There was just lack of consistency, he thought as well. And I don't want to get into the Victorian New South Wales debate.
Mm.
But anyway, leave it at that.
I'll leave it there. The other injury, of course, is Matty Roberts, who unfortunately, as he's done, show some promise and some consistency, has done his knee. Which part of his knee? Medial,
Medial ligament, yeah,
medial ligament.
which
So
is
he's looking at
gutting.
some weeks off, right?
Yeah, I think I don't even remember what it was, but I wouldn't expect he'd be back within at least a couple of months.
All right. I saw
So
today that Horse was suggesting that he's going to be in a what do you call it, a brace for the next month. So yeah, we're a fair way away from seeing Matty Roberts, unfortunately, perhaps.
yeah, it's gutting because I do like the look of him. I have liked the look of him since he started. since he played his first game. But yeah, gutting.
Yeah. So we've got MRO, nothing happened, so nothing to talk about there. So we can roll into, I guess, the replacements and injuries. One of the benefits about doing this on a Thursday night is we actually know the team on paper. So the Tommy Mack is back, Buddy is back in, and Sheldrick makes his return for I think only his second game. With Juzzy being sent back to emergency alongside Gould back to emergency. Fox has a concussion, of course, and Roberts with the knee. So Tommy Mack, Buddy, and Sheldrick all coming back in. Um, yeah, look, what do you say? I mean, that's a good thing, right? We've got our number one backman, arguably our number one forward back in. It makes a bit of a difference, we would hope, to the quality of the team generally, right?
Yeah, I mean, massive to have Tommy McCartan back in
Mm,
and Buddy, but you'd rather it wasn't because of injuries. One thing I think I'm excited because Noddy and others on the chat have been so excited as seeing Sheldrick
yep,
get named. Yeah, he had a huge. Was it last week? He got 39 touches, a couple of
yeah.
goals. Yeah, so
I mean,
excited for him.
he got drafted last year and came on for round one against the Giants. Oh yeah, it was against the Giants as well for round one last year. First game back from we have full games at COVID where we went and watched it at Allianz, if you remember.
Yep.
And yeah, he played. I thought a really cool game. Like we're like, oh, this guy's a bit of an excitement machine. He was part of the team for 4 weeks. It felt like at that time, and he was a baby, and he was playing pretty well, and he's done pretty good things in the VFL. So I think Roberts coming out makes room for Sheldrick's role, and what I'm seeing around the traps from testing the waters of Swansdom is that he's got a big fan base already. The Gus Bus,
The Gus Bus.
Gus Bus
What's the source of that?
of that. I don't know where they came from. Um, I don't know whether it's something that Noddy made up because he loves his nicknames, or it's something we heard around. But yeah, the Gus
Yeah,
Bus.
okay. There it is.
Um, it does lead us into, I guess, talking about the general state of injuries. So, just to remind everyone out there, injuries look like this: Amadi with a hamstring, looking at a few months off. Paddy McCartan, indefinite with his concussion. Not going to be no rush on that side. Dean Rampy has been added to the list. It looks potentially a bit of a longer term with a bulging disc. Mate, what's the disc? Is it in the neck or in the back? Where is it?
I thought it was his neck. I didn't
All
read
right.
the article. I know they just put out an article a couple of hours ago. But I thought it was neck, which, yeah, more often than not, you get a bulging disc in your lower back, not up in
Yeah.
your neck. But yeah, that is frustrating. Well, disappointing to hear for him
Mm.
and for us.
Yeah, he was playing pretty well, I think, unfortunately. And then we've got Sammy Reed out for past the bye, and Matty Roberts is going to be past the bye at this rate as well. There are the longer term ones, and then you've got yourself Robbie Fox sitting out a week for concussion. You've got Melican sitting out 1 or 2. Apparently, he's going to be playing if VFL was played this week, we've got a bye, but he'd be playing VFL, so that's a good sign for Melican and some depth in the team, which we don't have at the moment. And Sam Wicks is also a couple of weeks away for a shoulder injury. Now, I saw Sam Wicks at the Coles in Randwick not too long ago. The guy is huge. He's got the biggest shoulders I've ever seen in my life. Like, he's arguably bigger than Parker on the top half. Legs are skinny, but the top half is huge. I was surprised as a shoulder. Impossible to break those shoulders, like breaking something impossible. Anyway, that's a story for another time. But
Must have
then,
been big off season.
yeah,
Mind you, he's always been a nugget.
he's freaking massive. Like, I was standing behind him in the line. I'm like, this guy is so wide. I'm like, he looked like he had a swimmer's body, but like no legs. Anyway, so hopefully during his time of breaking the impossible shoulder, then he's been working on those big thighs and calves and something, getting something done. So we've got a fair few injuries still in the mix and some big names there. Of course, we can read them out: Rampy, Reed, Roberts now, given that he's a walk on for the team. Sam Wicks, arguably. Amadi, of course, and then Paddy. So there's a fair few names out there that still make up our best 22. So we do have a little bit of work ahead of us with probably blooding up a few more younger players in the VFL, albeit there's not a whole lot of talent to be derived from the VFL at the moment. I think we mentioned that with Jules perhaps a couple of weeks ago that the VFL team is pretty light on AFL ready talent. And when you take out Melican and now Francis, which we are now using, then yeah, we basically don't have anyone in the VFL that we're ready for. Like Sheldrick's the guy, and then there's a bit of a hole. So we've got the next couple of weeks. I'm saying is that it's going to be tricky. The next couple of weeks are going to be tricky. Thankfully, we don't play the hardest teams over the next few weeks, but we are again another injury away from really being dire straits. We've gotten the bare bones back basically, and it's just enough for us to get by. So, mate, what do you say to the team, the state of the team generally? Like, we're playing the Giants at the SCG, 2 o'clock game this Saturday. Yeah, what does it look like to you?
Look, if you ask the bookies, Swannies are paying less than $1.30. So,
Shh.
I mean, they've got their own injury concerns as well. They've
Yeah,
lost
massive.
All Australian defender. Um, Tom Green. Tom Green is back in, I think, this week.
Mm-hmm.
I need to check the teams again, but Phil Davis, I don't even know if he's back in.
No, he's out still.
Still out. So
Yeah.
they've still got quite a few injuries themselves, and it was Adam Kennedy. Was it
Yep.
Kennedy went for the season?
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep. Kennedy.
plus all the other guys like Bruce Lloyd. Actually, Lloyd need to check. I don't know if he was back in the squad, but they've got their own injury problems as well. So I'm inclined to. Well, I shouldn't say inclined to. The bookies have all the data in the world. Um, yeah, have a little bit of confidence that we can do them this weekend.
Yeah.
There's still, Cornelio played well on the weekend if you watch snippets of the game, and as did Kelly, as he always does.
Mm.
But yeah, maybe they're lacking a bit as well in depth, and we can exploit it, I think.
Yeah, they've got some. They've got some decent names like Likalia. I thought it's been pretty decent. Phil Davis, as you said. Lloyd is still not back in the team. Braden Bruce is out. Sam Taylor, of course, as you said, All Australian backman, who typically has Buddy's number. To be fair, Callan Ward, Jacob Ware, um, yeah, pretty decent names on that list there, and so they're in a world of hurt as well. We definitely have more pieces back than they do, but it's a fine line of what that looks like. Um, so yeah, the game, mate. 2 o'clock on a Saturday. How do you feel about those games?
I like them because I don't mind the afternoon game.
Hmm.
Couldn't tell if that was a loaded question.
No,
Means
no,
I
it's
can
not.
still be home in time for dinner.
No, well, it's easier for you. You don't have a kid to drive around the soccer and everything, right? He's too little still. Although he's big
Yeah,
enough that he'd probably smash a guy, but he's yeah, it's day game. I love him. I think it's grand. I love getting out there, but I can understand that it's probably not the best time, especially for a Sydney game, to drag kids away from their Saturday sports to the city, which is hard to get to for Sydney siders generally anyway, to watch a
that's a
game. So
good
it's a bit of a
point.
weird one.
It is a good point, especially if you're coming in from, if you are a genuine Western Sydney
Hmm.
fan and you're from out anywhere past Parramatta. Yeah, it's a bit of a trek to
Yeah,
be there just before 2 o'clock.
it's a bit of a jerk trip. Like Brady and I both grew up west. Brady in like Penrith way, myself down Campbelltown way. It is an hour and 20 to get yourself out to Moore Park to watch a game. That's a long freaking way, right? And 2 o'clock on a freaking Saturday, amongst all the other things you got to do, like nah. So it's a bit of a weird one. To be fair, I don't know what's been happening with the
To
AFL.
add, just to add to that, I think it's going to be a very wet one too. So
Oh, serious? Oh God,
we haven't checked the forecast lately,
I
but
want to go for a mountain bike. What the fuck? Ah, great. All right. So this. All right. Well, I don't mind that because our seats are in the on the cover.
Undercover.
On the cover, O'Reilly stand. Look for us. So yeah, we're okay there. So Brady, I don't give any predictions after the Bombers scenario last year. Do you want to? No pressure. Genuinely no pressure.
What am I picking scores or just a winner?
Or whatever you want. Any
No, look,
prediction.
I think, I think, I feel like they're as in injury trouble as we are, but I feel like we can beat them. We do tend to have some good tussles the derby, but I reckon I'm not going to try and attempt to predict a score, but I think we'll bounce back after last week.
All right. You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. Brady's backing us, so you know where the hate mail goes to.
Just
Um,
don't listen to this after the game.
the my prediction is that I think Sheldrick's going to do well. He's going to shine a little. Jazzy's out, and just basically, let's be honest, been playing pretty poorly. I've made enough excuses for him in the last, well, earlier in the season, I guess, and I was kind of excited about where he was heading, but he's done very little since. And so Sheldrick can take a bit of a role, a bit more maybe on the wings or whatever, and maybe get himself inside and for a couple contests, depending on what's going on. He's a bit of a bull. He loves his tackle, and that's something that we really need in the team at the moment. So, given what we saw last week anyway, and probably some other weeks. So, I'm going to say that I'm looking at Sheldrick for 6+ tackles for this week, is where my money is. It's not outrageous, but for a kid who's not necessarily going to get a whole lot of inside minutes, I think that's pretty decent.
Okay, you went very granular. I went pretty broad.
I stopped doing broad a long time ago after that game, after the Bombers
Okay.
game. I'll never speak of again. All right, mate. One of the last things to talk about is the Tassie team. Is announcement is any second is ominous. At any moment, we're going to hear about this Tassie team because Albo has green light the stadium build. Where we don't know, but and how we also don't know. But we just know money's been allocated. How is this is exciting, right? Like we want a Tassie team. They deserve a team.
Well, I'm sure the Tassie people want a team too.
Yeah.
Probably sick of following the Hawks and North. So look, I think it's great. I'm not sure putting $750 million into the precinct, but Albo has sold it as a potential solution to some housing issues or some infrastructure issues in Hobart. But
Mm.
look, the city's only got it. I know that it's a Tassie team and the games will be shared across Hobart and Lonnie, but got to remember there's only 190,000 people, so I don't know how big this stadium's going to be, but I wouldn't expect it to be full all the time.
Yeah, we're doing the math off air. So if there's 188,000 people and the stadium holds 30,000, this is very rough math, right? And not no, the math is solid, but the presumptions are rough. That would mean that something like 14% of the population would be at that game, excluding anyone from like out of town, interstaters. So like it's quite a number, right? It just goes to show that Tassie is very rural and well deserving of a freaking team nonetheless. So in my opinion, so it's very, I think it's kind of exciting, but we'll find out. There's talk about whether they fix up the Lonnie Stadium and fix up Bellerive or crush one of them and build something new. Do they build something entirely brand new? Eddie Maguire says a few things that I agree with, but one of the things he did point out was you got to put a freaking roof on one of the stadiums. He said if you've got a full forward, just say up and budding full forward, like just say Logan, right? Would you play for Tassie at a stadium where the wind is blowing like no one's business? That is likely going to be messing around with your stats. That you're going to find it really hard to play up at and make an impact. Like he would say, arguably no. Like if you're a genuine talent that saw a big career in the future, it'd be tricky for you to make that statement, make that move. So, and I felt that was a half decent argument for it. So he was hell bent on like, if you're going to do a stadium, do it properly. Put a freaking roof on it. make it good, so that you don't have to do it twice. Basically, what his suggestion was. So, yeah, I don't know. Any other points there, Brady, on the Tassie stuff?
No, I just think it's great for the state that it's looking like they're going to get a team, and I assume they're going to have to play a few years. We're probably a few years away,
Hmm.
so maybe like the last two new teams, they get a run in VFL.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be
But it'd be
fun.
good. Yeah, I think it's going to be fantastic.
I,
Good excuse to
I'm
get down to Hobart or Lonnie.
yeah, a freaking mountain biking down in Tasmania is second to none. So like that'd be awesome. So
A few trips to Medina on the
yeah,
cards now.
yeah, mate, for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. At Derby, Blue Derby, why not? One of the last things we have on the list here is the CEO search. So if you've been listening, we've been banging on about how CEOs don't know who our CEO is and still my head in. Um, it has come to a short list of either being Andrew Dillon or Gillan McLaughlin continues on. That's basically what they've come back with. Gillian McLaughlin or the guy that they've been telling us is going to take over all these months. So that's the only options we've got. And someone on Twitter made this fantastic connection. Andrew Dillon, right? Andrew Dimitri, Andrew Dillon. Okay. Gillan McLaughlin, Andrew Dillon, Gillan Dillon. It's basically just emerging. And I am starting to think with my tinfoil hat firmly on my head that this guy doesn't exist and it's just some kind of AI that's going to be running the freaking CEO position for the AFL. Brady, are you on board with me with this tinfoil hat brigade?
Uh,
Come on, mate. Free
yeah,
tinfoil
I'm
hat
not,
for
I'm not sure I
everyone.
can back you there, mate. But anyway, I was thinking it was Matt Dillon's cousin or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't it something about Mary? Right, that guy.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Look, to be
it's a
honest,
different
I
hat.
don't know anything about him. And there was an interesting article, I think it was in the Fin last week, the Financial Review, about Richard Goyder taking his time and trying to convince Gillen to stay on. So
Mm.
maybe there was a bit of truth in that article.
Yeah, Eddie's also said that. A couple of people I've noticed around the traps have mentioned the same thing, that the preference is for Gillan McLaughlin to stick around. I don't know whether it's like a handover period or whether just like there's not talent there, mate. So you're going to have to stick around for a bit longer. I don't know what the result of it is. So anyway, I guess we'll find out soon enough. Brady, anything else to wrap up into one last thing, or before we wrap it all up for the potty?
No, let's hope we. No, not let's hope. Let's get a better result this weekend. Probably going to be some wet footy. But yeah, anyone that does listen, get down.
Yep, it's going to be an awesome day. It's always good playing the little brothers over there in the West. So, with that, thank you, Brady. This end brings us to the end of the episode. So, on behalf of Brady, myself, and Bob, thank you so much for listening in. As always, make sure you like us wherever it is. It does make a difference to the potty, and there is not enough good Sydney Swans content out there. So, make sure you support it where you can. So, with that in mind, until then, up the
The
Bloods
Bloods and
and can
can
you
you
Swanee?
Swanee?